even though it's been ages since the first season dropped and most of us have probably raised whole families in that time, we all still tuned in to watch the latest Squid Game seasons. And it's fair to say it was well worth the wait. Squid Game continues to be the most excruciating watch in the game, taking every chance to rip our souls out that they can. With the show finally coming to an end, we can finally take a proper step back and evaluate what we're left with. While the show in total was undeniably both interesting and entertaining, it also ended kinda weirdly.
What?
With an American spin-off being set up to take place. Honestly, this felt kinda weird, making it feel like Netflix now sees Squid Game as a franchise that they can almost milk with spin-offs, events, and tie-in reality shows. This commodification of what once started as an interesting commentary on human nature and capitalism has constructed itself into becoming the antithesis of what it was trying to critique in the first place. Nonetheless, all 3 seasons of the show still provide insightful commentary and culminates in its own conclusions without being too mired by the external influences of creating this grandiose franchise. But with all that being said, let's go ahead and start at the beginning and dissect what Netflix has done with Squid Game.
The first season of the show primarily focused on the socio-economic divide within the working class, pitting them against a group of shadowy elite figures who derive pleasure from the agony and conflict these games brought upon its players. The games themselves are all metaphors in of themselves. The first game, Red Light Green Light, depicts this large number of players all trying to edge each other out to finish first against this all-seeing doll that is a very clear-cut representation of a capitalistic system surveying its workers, keeping them on a tight leash, yet pitting them against each other for the sake of a promotion, whether it be in life or in the games, which would mean surviving onto the next round. After that, the candy game where players are forced to lick their way to survival kind of shows how in working conditions set with a capitalistic undertone, the work often presents itself as sweet and almost relaxing, but behind all of this is often the lack of preparation, presented by the small tools and punishment that comes with failure to complete the task. The third game, the most obvious of them all, comes in the form of a tug of war, where class struggle is overcome by having a support system giving the players a false sense of hope, thinking that they could in fact escape this hell in a sense, but will soon realize that regardless of this unity, everyone is in it for themselves. As such, the next 2 games, from Marbles to the Glass Bridge, are all games that have players relying on convincing, manipulating, and essentially abusing social ties to push themselves forward in the game.
By underpinning the nature of these games with a tone that addresses the socioeconomic challenge presented by them and how it's all ultimately a rat race to escape the dire situations the characters find themselves in, this led to some of the most interesting and popular television of 2021. By seeing these participants actively destruct their morals for the chance to elevate their socioeconomic status, we as viewers are glued to our seats watching the depravity unfold, almost as if the shadowy elites were surrogates for both me and you. Now, with the monumental success of season 1, it was only a logical decision for the show creator and Netflix to renew the show. What followed was clearly a season follow-up split into 2 parts, season 2 and season 3.
The issue that presented itself was how could the show take a leap forward while still remaining true to the first season's ideas and themes. But with the character of Ji-hun came a lot of interesting narratives to explore, such as him now willingly wanting to return to the games as a way to put an end to it. But narratively, this also introduces a confounding agent, someone who knows the true intentions of what the games are trying to do and actively tries to put an end to it. Yet, the reason why the story still keeps its quality is that it understands this element and doesn't stray away from that fact. What it does is that it adds on to this idea by pivoting away from the central aspect of socioeconomic hardships to the morality of humans and the limits to which we can push ourselves to find this so-called freedom of financial liberty. This was eloquently done by introducing new characters that had the opportunity to be fleshed out a lot more than the characters from the earlier season, from having a mother and son competing against each other, a pregnant woman, and the father of said child, a washed-up content creator, a washed-up celebrity, and even more. The games became a backdrop for exploring the cycles of power and corruption, with the mere fact that even after the first season, the games will still continue to run as if nothing happened before, showing how humanity often finds itself in the cycle of its worst possible actions.
This cycle of repetition and depravity is seen in the purest form by having mothers having to kill their own children and having fathers being willing to give up their own child to escape their current predicament. In doing so, the finale of Season 3, which wraps up the story set up in Season 2, presents the games as a metaphor more for nihilism and the fact that the games never truly end. By having Gi-hun go out as a martyr, it symbolizes that in the grand scheme of things, his resistance or rebellion against the system meant nothing more than more lives being shed in the process, and that without meaningful change within the social hierarchy that constructs the society we live in, this system of people being pitted against each other will be eternal, and that the resistance brought forward by characters like Gi-hun Gi-hun will only be aesthetic in nature and never truly structural. The whole premise of the VIPs and elites are that they derive pleasure from these players stripped of their character and used as pawns for their own amusement, painting the games as apathetic and indifferent, reflecting a sense of nihilism. In addition to all of that, Gi-hun's death also symbolizes his final understanding that when life has no inherent meaning but fighting each other for money, status, and survival, death doesn't even seem like a bad option.
Now, with all the depressing stuff out of the way, the reason why we believe the season fell short was mainly due to the fact that the ending loses a lot of its depth when the frontman sees the recruiter in the States. While this does add to the fact and the idea that the story is universal and not something that is just contained in South Korea, it in part diminishes the impact that the martyrdom of Gi-hun had for the story. By having the frontman come visit Gi-hun's daughter and present this chance of upward social mobility, it allows for us, the viewers, to kind of move away from the nihilistic ending and rest knowing that morality still has a place in our world. Whilst we understand that Netflix plans on having David Fincher work on an American Squid Game, the ending of this story seems like a corporate ploy and tie-in akin to the nature of a Marvel post-credit scene, more than an understanding that this class divide and the limits of human morality is a universal concept.